And hello and welcome everybody to our React Native workshop today. This is the first of our React Native workshops. And we're gonna get going here in just a minute with some really fun content for you today. But for now, just chill, watch a music video on databases. Yes, read those subtitles. I'm not kidding. It's an EDM song on databases. So you should definitely take a listen. All right, we'll be with you in just a minute. All right, hello everybody, and welcome to our Implement a React Native mobile app workshop today. I am David Jones-Gilardi. I'm joined by Sonia Siganporia. Sonia, hello. Say hello to everybody. All right, so real quick before we get going into the core of the content, can I just get a confirmation that you can hear us and that you can see us? Let's give us some thumbs up to make sure that you can hear us and see us. And we want to make sure we're good before we get going. Oh, Johnson, while we're waiting, what are we building today? So today we're gonna actually implement and deploy a React Native mobile app. We'll talk about more in here in a minute. All right, yes, Rohit, finally, and I see a bunch of yeses coming through. Wonderful. Okay, so it sounds like everyone can hear us and stuff like that. Great. All right, so let's go ahead and kind of just get into the content and talk a little bit about what we're gonna do today. So first thing, just a couple housekeeping items to go through. It's myself and Sonia with you today here on screen, but in the chats, we have a whole team of us, right? So ask your questions. It's part of why we do these. We do them live. This is an interactive session. It's meant for you to ask your questions. I've seen some folks that are saying, hey, I'm a beginner and stuff like that. Don't be afraid. No questions bad or anything like that. So we've got a team of folks here to help you out. Now, this is the overall agenda, right? This is... this is what we're going to kind of expect to do. The first thing, obviously, now we're doing some of the housekeeping. Then we're just going to give a brief overview of this project, right? So if you've been with us before, and one of our previous workshops, we actually have another to-do app workshop that we do using React. Now, the difference with the previous workshop is that one builds it up completely from scratch, right? If you're brand new to React, I highly suggest it. I'll show you some links later. But that one will help you create your first React app. And, how do you kind of work with it? How do you work with the database and all sorts of things? This workshop, what we're going to do now is we're going to extend past that. We're going to take the original to-do app that was in React, and then we're going to make it React Native. We're going to move it to React Native and deploy that, up to production, database backend, and the whole thing, right? And the key thing here is this, what did that actually look like going from React to React Native? What kind of choices did we need to make? What kind of tech stacks were there? All sorts of things, right? So you can see there in sections 3 and 4, we're going to have a lot on the kind of React to React Native and what that looks like. And then we'll round it out, kind of looking at some of the native features, because there's a definite difference. When you're doing a web app compared to a native mobile app, there are definitely some differences as far as the UI and flow. And then we'll finish up with some resources. Okay, so just a couple things from the housekeeping end. Of course, you're probably watching us up on YouTube in the top left there. At any point, by the way, if you ever want to, you can always go to our Twitch channel. We have our DataSex Devs Twitch. We usually use Twitch as kind of a backup, right? So if you're watching us here, you're fine. But if you prefer Twitch, that's fine. Just understand that we're watching the questions in YouTube chat and in Discord, not Twitch, right? So if you have questions, make sure you're asking one of those. Then on the top right-hand side, you'll see the dtsx.io link to Discord. So the Discord channel, here's the difference. In YouTube, when the session ends today, the chat's going to stop, right? But if you want to continue the conversation, if you have follow-up questions or anything like that, the Discord is definitely the place to go. So I would... chances are the team is probably putting the Discord link down, but the Discord link, you can see it up there in the top right-hand corner. Right now, our Discord channel, we have a community of about 15,000 people in there. It's pretty live and everything like that. It's a really nice place to go, especially if you've got follow-up questions, or if you have longer form questions, or maybe you need to post a screenshot or something like that. You know, it's things like that you can't really do in the YouTube chat. Then on the bottom, we have menti.com, which we're going to go to in a moment. Menti is what we're going to use to first ask you some questions for that. Okay, so some of the tools. What are we doing today? You know, are there prerequisites? That kind of thing. First thing, at the top left-hand corner is we're going to use GitHub. So GitHub is the place where the workshop repository is. Everything we are doing today has been built to be self-service. You could totally do it at your own pace, separate from the live session today if you wanted. And everything you need is in the repo, and we'll be dropping the repo link to you as we go through. Then on the top right-hand side, you see Gitpod. So if you're not familiar with Gitpod, Gitpod is a cloud-based IDE, right? So for those of you who are used to using something like maybe like IntelliJ or VS Code or something like that, you do it locally. Gitpod allows you to do this up in the cloud. What's really cool about this is we get to pre-bake all the configuration, the libraries, and everything you need. So you can just click a button and go, right? As compared to having to load everything locally and everything like that. So we do highly suggest that you go ahead and just use Gitpod with us if you're gonna do this along with us. Then in the bottom left-hand corner, you see AstroDB. So this whole implementation, this to-do app that we're gonna build with React Native and in a native mobile app, it's the full end-to-end thing though. It's not just the to-do app. It's actually backed by a data layer. We're going to push it as a Jamstack up to Netlify. You know, there's the whole thing. So AstroDB is the database, the cloud-based serverless database that we're going to use for that to power the backend. That's so when you're writing your to-dos and you're doing things, that's where they're all being stored and such. And then finally, in the lower right here, there you see Expo. So we're going to talk in more detail about what I'm just about to say. But we decided for this native mobile app to go the route of Expo. And what that really means is, for those of you who've done native mobile app development before, you would normally need to download things like Xcode and Android Studio and bring all of these resources locally to be able to do local development. Expo allows us, along with React Native, to code in a single language and then deploy out to all of those devices. We'll go through all of that. So by the way, I want to be clear, all of the stuff we use, everything in our workshops is absolutely free. There is no point where you should be charged anything or anything like that. So all these tools are all in the cloud and free. You should be able to do this whole workshop from your browser. Okay, so let's go over to Menti. And by the way, while I'm switching over to Menti, here's our Menti. So either scan the QR code, or if you go to the code down there, you see in the bottom left-hand corner that 49777253, or scan the QR code. This will bring up Menti, and give us a thumbs up. Let us know you're here. So I should see down here, I should see this starting to light up. There we go, I saw one come in. Awesome. So we'll give everybody a moment to get to this. And let's check, how are we doing? Are there any questions that I need to know about? Let's see. All right, I see. Yes, this session is recorded. By the way, I saw some questions there. There we go. Oh, good. All right. I see about 47 people in. How many do we have? All right. I'll give everyone another minute to get the Menti going. We've got almost 400 of you with us today, so we'll get more in the Menti. Again, just scan that QR code or go to menti.com. Oh, thank you, Cedric. I see. Do I have hairs? Cedric, you're going to have to clarify that question for me. All right, we have like 100. All right, why don't we go ahead and I'll move forward with the Menti. Now, by the way, the code is up top as well. So if you're just coming in now and you're like, where's the code? It's up top. So the first thing I want to do is just ask a couple questions. We want to get to know you a little bit more. First one, how much experience do you have with native mobile development? Oh, looks like we have some veterans in here. A bunch have never done it before. Oh, fun. See, Sonia, you got your work cut out for you. See, no pressure, Sonia. You have to be perfectly clear and concise, everybody. Oh, okay. So we have a couple folks. We have one person, more than 5 years. That's wonderful. Excellent. So it seems like the most of you are pretty new to this and everything. We'll be very curious as to your thoughts, you know, on the path we took and such like that. All right, wonderful. All right, have you ever used React Native before? Oh, and by the way, if you're answering in the YouTube chat, which I see a bunch of coming through, make sure to answer in the Menti. So I'll put the code up again for you, because this is going to be important for the swag quiz later. This is where we're going to go for the swag quiz. So make sure that you are answering in Menti. All right, it looks like some of you have, but it looks like the vast majority have not. All right. You know, and for those of you who have used React Native before, I'm definitely curious as you see us go through this process and everything like that, to your thoughts. Maybe you have some suggestions or some lessons learned you've run into. I would definitely love to see those in the chat. All right, last one. Have you been to any of our workshops before? Oh, welcome to some of our folks that are coming back. All right. Oh, we have a lot of folks coming back today. Hey, wonderful. And welcome to all of our new folks with us today. Wonderful to see everybody here. All right, excellent. All right, thank you. So with that, thank you everyone for answering. Leave this window open because we're going to do our swag quiz with this later. So it'll make it much easier for you to be able to get into the swag quiz later. All right, so first thing I want to do is do a quick demo, right? So I'm just going to pop over to my screen. I can make this a little bigger, I guess. So simply enough, there's actually really two things per this. The second part of this will be kind of funny because I have to pick up my phone and hopefully it shows on the camera. We'll see how that goes. But the to-do list, you know, from an app standpoint, it's pretty simple, right? You've got items that you can add. Let's see. Well, Ryan already likes to take over the world. Maybe I can eat a lot more chocolate, right? So from the to-do list standpoint, here we go. You know, it's you enter in items. Items show up. You know, you have each item is a to-do item. They show up here. You can, you know, complete them. You know, you can look at the completed ones. You can look at the active ones. You can say delete them. You know, very simple kind of CRUD operations. You know, create, read, update, delete kind of application, right? It's about as simple as they come. Now, here's the big difference. If you have done our previous workshop or just in React, then what you'd end up with is a to-do item or a to-do list that looks something like this, but it's more like a web app. Here's the difference though, and maybe you can see this. Let's see how well this, I don't know that that's gonna render very, there you go, right? So now you can see on my iPhone, I have the to-do list app as well. Now the difference though is this isn't just running in a browser. I don't have it just running in like Safari or Chrome or something like that. It's actually running as a native app, and this is being enabled through the whole React Native piece. And in order for it to show up on my phone like that, I actually had to deploy it out into, you know, a production global site where I can access it publicly on my phone, right? This is not local development or anything like that. I'm not doing that through Xcode, or I'm not doing that through any kind of like, you know, local connected development over my local network or something. So that is the end result. That's where we want to get today. So we're going to take this to-do list app. We're going to look at what it took to go from React to React Native, and then we're gonna deploy this thing up in our production servers. All right, how are we doing on questions? We have anything we need to answer real quick? Let's see. And okay, it looks like questions are good. All right, great. Then with that, we'll get into the overview, and I will give it over to Sonia. You can totally see your screen, right. Sonia. We're seeing everything.
Let me know when you can see it. Okay.
Oh, we got it. Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So like David said, the goal of this workshop is to convert our existing React to-do web app, that's from another workshop we teach, into a React Native web and mobile app. So don't worry, you don't need anything from that previous workshop, but we're going to walk you through all the steps we took to convert from that React app to React Native. So here you can see the two different versions of the to-do web app. So before in the bottom left, we had just the basic create, complete, delete application, and you could also filter the to-dos in the bottom footer. And then here on the top right, you can see the end product that we ended up with. We've added some UI and additional mobile features like swiping, and we moved the filter from the bottom to the top into a segmented control. We'll walk through how we created those. here you can see the mobile versions of the app. So it looks very similar in web and mobile. And you can see that at the end of this workshop, you'll have a complete implementation of this app working on your phone as well as in your browser. So the original challenge with mobile development is that if you wanted to build a mobile app and a web app on iOS, Android, and web, you'd have to build the same application 3 times on 3 platforms in 3 different languages. So for example, if you wanted to build for iOS, you'd have to build it in Swift on Xcode. If you wanted to build for Android, you'd have to build in Java or Kotlin in Android Studio. And if you wanted to build for web, for example, you'd use JavaScript in a range of IDEs like Visual Studio. That's a lot of platforms, and that's a lot of different languages. That's a lot of extra work. And so the value add of platforms like React Native and Flutter, or rather frameworks, is that you can build it once and use the same code base to have apps working on all 3 platforms.
Now, Sonia, I do have something that we should probably clarify. I saw a question from Chinmaya and some others on YouTube. What exactly do we mean by a native mobile app?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So to just put it super simply, native means that the application will work on that particular platform's iOS. So it'll work on an Android phone, or it'll work on an iOS device. It'll work on a Mac OS operating system on your computer. So it's based on, it works natively using native features on that operating system. David, does that encapsulate everything?
I believe so. I was actually responding to a question, so I wasn't actually listening to you, but it sounded okay.
Okay. Great. Okay. So hopefully if there are more questions, feel free to continue asking them in the chat and I'll get back to them. So originally when we were going through the process of figuring out which framework to use for converting our original React app, we looked at Flutter and Expo. And Expo expands on React Native and adds a few more features and just manages it a little bit for you. And you could also use React Native CLI as well to create the app. So we decided to go with React Native because we already had the web app written in JavaScript and React. So it was a more natural transition than recreating the entire thing from scratch, again in Dart, which is Flutter's programming language. So what does Expo offer in addition to React Native? So an Expo basically enables you to use the same JavaScript or TypeScript code base to develop, build, deploy, and quickly iterate on your iOS, Android, and web apps using React and React Native components. You even have access to the Expo Go mobile app, which can act as your simulator on your personal mobile phone. So you don't need to actually download Xcode and Android Studio, which they're both really heavy and sometimes can really lag on your actual computer if you don't have a lot of computing power or network access. Expo also offers Snack, which is like a browser-based playground that supports emulators for Android, iOS, and web, which also offers you another way to see your app as you're building.
You know, one thing I want to address here, because Yogesh Latte asked a great question. He says, Expo has certain disadvantages also, right? And yes. So Expo is great to get started. It is wonderful. Like, one of the things we're able to do with Expo is the fact that all of us are going to be able to do this on the cloud together and on our phones using just Expo. You don't have to download Xcode, like Sonia was saying. You don't have to download the Android Studio, and you don't have to worry about, doing local development from that standpoint. So it's a great tool to get started. Where it can later on, so, it kind of gets you going, right? But later on, depending on the kind of material, the content you're pushing, you might be limited. Like there's, you can make actually, like, one of the cool features of it is you can actually make like real-time updates to your app, even in iOS, right? Without having to push back out to the store. But if you need to change certain items, right? If you need some more advanced capabilities, then Expo is going to start to kind of like have, diminishing returns at that end of things. But when you're first getting started and stuff, it's a wonderful platform. So yeah, there can be some disadvantages, but for our purposes today of just kind of introducing what this might look like, it's great for starting out. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Sonia? Or
Sure. Yeah. So one of the things that when I was going through and learning about Expo a lot is you can start off with a managed Expo project, and then you can also export it. to just React Native Bear or Expo Bear, and that reduces some of the friction in trying to expand some of the custom features if you're finding Expo to be challenging. So a lot of times you can start in Expo and then move forward depending on what you end up needing. So to give you a little background on how Expo works, Expo has two main parts, the dev server and the Metro Bundler packager. And the Metro Bundler, just to put it shortly, compiles all of your JavaScript code into a single file. And then also converts your assets into objects so they can be viewable on mobile. While the dev server takes your JavaScript bundle created by the packager, the Metro Bundler, and runs it inside the Expo app in your simulator. So that means that you can then see your app running on your mobile device or in the simulator on your computer. Expo also offers a tunnel process, which is what we're going to use in Gitpod today to make everyone able to see the app that they create on their cloud and view it on their phone, which allows your devices to be accessible outside of your LAN. So you can access these servers without you needing to change your firewall settings. And the command for that will be Expo start tunnel. We'll walk through all of that. So to give you a little insight into Netlify, Netlify dev, the command we're going to use, allows you to build and test your web apps on your local machine, and in this case, serverless functions, by running its production routing engine in a local dev server, so on your computer or your phone, and injecting the right environment variables in as well. So the key for us was really injecting the right environment variables because we need to configure that based on the platform you're running it on. So if you're running on Gitpod, you need certain environment variables. If you're running on your phone, you need other environment configurations. If you're running locally, similarly, you know.
The amount of complexity that when you go from just doing like regular web app, web application development with something like React or any of the JavaScript frameworks and such, and then going to mobile, especially for our mobile native veterans that we saw from our question earlier. I'll be very curious to see your thoughts on this as well. But honestly, the complexity goes from like here to over here, right? Because there's a lot more moving parts, right? You've got to test against all these different platforms. You have emulators to use, as Sonia was just talking about. They have different network requirements. It makes it a little more interesting for sure. So we're gonna try to help you with all that today.
Yeah, this was definitely the most challenging part of the conversion and getting everything to run, was trying to work with all these three different networking requirements and getting them all to align and meet each other. Okay, David, I think it's back to you.
Yes, it is. Now, actually, I'm going to pop back to the other, let me just get to where we need to go. Okay, one thing I do want to say, there we go. One thing I do want to say about this slide that Sonia was just telling you. If you've heard now, all of a sudden, we've talked about, for a moment, we've talked about React, we've talked about Expo, we talked about Netlify. And if you're like, whoa, what are all of these things, right? One thing I would like to point out is in our, and let me know if the Zoom is okay, I pre-zoomed on this, but this is the repo that we shared with you earlier, right? So this is our native mobile app. One thing I want to point out, though, is right here, that if you are completely new to React, right? If you've not done anything new, with React before, and you're not sure about this stuff, or you don't know what Jamstack is or whatever, go take a look at our previous workshop. This is the one where we start the to-do app. We build it in React. We go into a lot more detail with things like the Netlify piece and such like that. We're not really getting into the details of that today because we're going to be spending our time doing this, kind of going over what this conversion from React to React Native is like, right? I would really suggest that, again, if you're new to React and you're new to like doing web development, take a look at this one. Now, do you have to do that before this workshop? No. We give you all the instructions. You should be able to do it with this. But if you want to like create your first React app, and kind of be stepped through how the to-do app works, that's the place to go. So I just wanted to point that out before we continue on. All right. And okay, then the last part here before we get into our first exercise really is this is just a high level of the architecture, the general architecture that we're working with. So yes, we have the to-do native mobile app that we're going to deploy, but what are we deploying it on, right? So we've got the client that a lot of the React Native, that's really where, the presentation view is really where a lot of this work was done. But still, you've got the back end. You have the piece that when you're using the to-do app, it's actually going to talk over REST endpoints to do things in the data layer. And so we're going to have a full database and everything. We're going to be deploying the whole thing to Netlify. That's where Netlify comes together. That is going to be when you actually deploy it and push it up to Netlify and do that part. This is that application backend here. Then we have AstroDB for the data layer. So you're actually doing a full end-to-end deployment in this case. So I just want you to be aware of that part. It is not just the to-do app. It's actually a full end-to-end deployment. And the hope with that is that you can take some of this knowledge and then you're able to apply it to your own apps. Because what's really cool about this stuff, and we talk about this a lot when we're talking about, especially for full stack front-end devs and things like that, is that now you can pretty much code up the whole lifecycle, including what was traditionally back-end services with like serverless functions. And you can power them with things like Netlify. You can power them things with AstroDB. And both of those cases have free tiers and they both scale indefinitely. So if you're wanting to start some, if you have an idea for a new app or something like that, and you're like, hey, I want a platform where I can deploy this thing, you're actually going to be deploying on that today. All right, so before we do this, let's see, how are we doing on questions? Let's see. Anything? I see some. Yeah, Vicky Pale asks, why choose React Native? There are already many other frameworks available. Yeah, right. So Sonia addressed this a little bit earlier, but really what it comes down to is our to-do app in this particular case was already in React. We actually have a lot of React expertise here on the team. So we chose to go the React Native route in that standpoint, from that standpoint. We also, if you notice, I keep referencing back to the previous to-do app. We're looking at this as like a continuation. Like, how would I take that and then move it to React Native? So that had a large, degree to do with why we went React Native. The other part of it, though, was when we looked at Flutter and we were comparing like Flutter, like the different tech stacks, like, Flutter and Expo and React Native and other libraries. Another key factor, as Sonia was talking about before, is that if you use something like Flutter, in order for us to do a workshop like this, especially online, you would have to download Xcode. You'd have to download Android Studio. You'd have to do all that. Xcode was something like 11 gigabytes. In many cases, nobody will finish downloading that by the time we're done with the workshop. So there's no doubt that because we're doing this all up in the cloud, and we already have a lot of React expertise, we chose React Native for that particular reason. So it wasn't like we were making some judgment call or something like that and saying React Native is better. It's just the one we chose. Yes, that's a good point, Yogesh. Says choosing React Native offers advantage of platform independency as well. Yeah, that's a very good point. Okay, Sonia, any other questions, anything you want to answer?
Nothing right now. I'm just trying to follow along in the chat. Moves very quickly.
I see another neat question as we get into this from Sana. Between React Native and Flutter, which one would you prefer? That's a neat question because I'll tell you, even though Flutter requires you to download the development environments for the different platforms, it actually has some really cool tools. Like Flutter was really capable. So it was one of those things where, as I was going through it, and Sonia, as we did a big comparison between them. The thing that put it over the edge was the fact that we could do all of this in the cloud. Because Flutter, again, has some really nice capabilities as well. I would love to hear from some of our mobile native veterans that are on with us, if they have feelings on that as well. All right, so let's get into our first exercise. I almost said first instance. So what we want to do, and I guess I should just kind of briefly explain the way the repo works. You'll see a set of objectives at the top. They're in this case, from a prerequisite standpoint, if you don't have a GitHub account, you will need to create one. Again, that's free. If you want to do the full thing, where you're going to publish this to your mobile device, you're going to need to use Expo Go. Could you do it as a web app right in your browser? Yes, but it's not the same experience, right? That's up to you, right? So we'll have the instruction on that later, either in both the iOS or Android stores. Again, all of that is free from that standpoint. All right, so another thing I want to point out as we get into the first thing is the homework, right? So if you want to do the homework, you'll see this link that is right here. Then you just click on that, and that's where you'll submit the thing for your homework. You can get yourself a nice badge that says that you've actually done the work and everything. We actually have a ton of these badges. I think we have more than a dozen now of different workshops and everything. So if you're interested in that, I just want to point that out because we see that question a lot. Okay, so the first thing, let's go ahead and put in, we're going to go to step 1. Yeah, Priya, what is exactly is Astra and why do we need it? So Astra DB is going to be our data layer. That is going to be the backing database. Like I said, we're actually going to deploy this thing to a real production site using Netlify. And when you are doing things with the to-do apps, anytime you interact with a to-do item or create one or delete one, you're actually writing that to a backend data store. That's where Astra DB comes into play. All right, so first thing here is you'll see this create Astra. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to slowly step through all of this with you, right? If you want to follow along and you want to do this with me, wonderful. If you want to do it later, totally up to you, right? But I'm going to slowly step through this with you and go through it kind of like I was doing it the first time. One thing I'm going to suggest, by the way, when you create, when you click on these buttons or links, unfortunately, Markdown doesn't let us use target blank. So you need to either control click or middle click or say right click and open link in new tab. Otherwise, it's just going to replace your repo. So you'll see I went to another tab and I pulled it over. Now, when you create Astra for the first time, if you've never done it before, you can register with GitHub or Google or just type in your what you want to choose. In my case, since I have, I'm just going to go ahead and log in. And I'll make sure to zoom once we get in here. Okay. Now, if you're a first-time user, you're going to see a little bit different screen. You should see a button, though, that says Start for Free, right? Everything we're going to do is free. There's a very generous free tier and stuff like that. That's for both Astra DB and Netlify. So again, you shouldn't have to pay anything, but you want to say, start free. And then you're going to get a screen that looks something like this. It says create a database. And you'll see that we've provided some values for you here, like the database name. I'm going to put in database name and then the key space. The key space, by the way, is just our table, our container of tables. If you're coming from the relational world, then that would be like a database or a schema, right? It's just the container of tables. So notice I want to have to-dos native workshop DB as my database name, and then to-dos is the key space. And again, this is the data layer we're going to use to power the back end of our to-do app. Yes, start free now button, Harsh, exactly. Start free now. All right, then for the provider and region that you see down here, you can choose any of them. Really what this comes down to is we, as part of Astra DB, it provides any, you can use any one of the 3 major cloud providers. You don't need to log in with those. You don't need to register with them. There's no cost to you or anything like that. You can just choose one. It's really about having the choice of what vendor you want to use. Today, I'm going to use Google Cloud. Just pick a region close to you, right? I'm over in North America. I'm in the East, so I'll pick South Carolina. Once you've filled out the database name, the key space name, and you selected a provider and region, you'll see create database over here will light up. And just go ahead and click on that. Yeah, Tron, you can totally come back later. Matter of fact, that's a good reason to go to our Discord channel and come chat with us if you want. You can, this will be saved, this will be recorded. So you can, okay, that's what the team was telling me about. All right, there we go. Yeah, so you can totally come back later and do this with us anytime. All right, so what'll happen is once you create your database, you might see it go into like, you might see an initializing, or it might say preparing or something like that. That's fine. Once you've created the database, then you're good to move on. Yep, I'm Zahir. I'm going to wait. And as a matter of fact, once you get to a point where you see that database being created, let us know. And yep, I'll let everybody get caught up. Again, if you need me to do that again, let me know. And I can go through the process one more time. Yes, it's free. Yes. And like I said, once you create this, you should see it say pending or initializing. Yeah, I'm actually talking to the team about that right now. Make sure we're all good. So if you see an oops or something like that, that's all right. We can move forward for that. All right, give me just a second here. All right. All right, there we go. Yeah, I'll just do this again. Okay. Oh, Gunkrat, it's not a certificate for the workshop itself, but what it is if you complete the homework, you can get a badge. We'll give you a badge for that. All right, I think for some of you who are having a hard time with the database, what we're going to do is we're just going to come back to that. We don't absolutely have to do that part just yet, so we will come back to that. And Valine, yes, Astra does work with an API. You can use REST. You can use a document API with JSON objects. You can use GraphQL. gRPC is coming, right? So there's multiple APIs you can use with the drivers. All right. All right, let me go ahead and, all right, so what we're going to do then, just for now, let's skip to 3. Let's skip to step 3, deploy to Netlify. Yep, we're going to skip right now, go to step 3, because we can wait for this. As I'm talking to the team, I think we already know what's going on there, and they are fixing it right now. So I'm going to skip to 3. I just put those links here. Yep, Zahir, if you have the oops, let's just skip on to the deploy to Netlify step. So what we want to do here is, again, I'm going to say right-click, open a new tab, and then deploy to Netlify button. And I'll move this over to this other screen. And you'll see this connect to GitHub button. So what this is going to do, this is actually really cool. So Netlify is essentially the deployment of our web app, right? And our mobile native app. That's where we're going to deploy it to. So when you say connect to GitHub, it's going to go through your GitHub account. So this is where you need to have GitHub. And then it's going to take and it's going to create a brand new repo for you, this workshop to do native mobile. And you say save and deploy. It's going to go ahead and create a version of this in your own GitHub account, right? So you're actually going to get a copy of it. So you should see a screen like this. Yeah, Umkar, you don't have to fork it. That's actually something that what's going to happen here is Netlify is going to do that for you, right? I'm going to explain that here in a moment. So once you get to this page, you guys, if you've gotten here, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you've gotten to the Netlify page and that you're deploying the site. All right, see some thumbs up coming in. Wonderful. Yep, that's okay, Ruchi. Yeah, go ahead and just move on to the Netlify step. We'll come back to Astra. Yeah, we can do these separate. Good. All right, I see lots of All right. Let me Okay, good. So once you've gotten to this point, what I want you to do is click on the site deploy in progress. And what you'll see here is the first deployment, right? So if I click on this in Netlify, you're actually going to see it building the app, right? It's actually building the to-do app. You should recognize, for those of you who are familiar with React, NPM, things like that, you'll see some stuff that's pretty familiar. Yep, Anjali, this session's being recorded, so you can always go back to it and do it later. All right, then what you're looking for is it's going to go through the full deployment. You see this Netlify build. So what's happening here is the first time that you push the Netlify, it's actually grabbing all the code and everything in the app from the GitHub repository, and it is building it. It's actually going to build the app. You'll start to see some things like Expo build web here. So we're building the mobile web app, and we'll let Netlify do its thing. Karen, what I clicked, if I go back, okay, originally you'd be here. I went to site deploy in progress. I clicked there. You see these deploys, and then I click on the deploy itself, and that will show me the log. There you go. All right, so we're going to let these build. We'll let that bake for a moment. And so I saw a bunch of thumbs up here. I'm going to go ahead and go back over to Sonia, who is then going to move into some of the next content and start looking at what we did from React Native. So we can get into that core of the content while we're waiting for Netlify to do its thing. All right, Sonia, you ready over there?
Yep. Give me a second to just present.
All righty.
All right,
wonderful.
let me know
there
when
you go.
You're good to go.
Oh, you
Perfect.
are good to go. All right, so like I said, just get to that Netlify step, and then we'll let that bake, and Sonia's going to bring us through this other content.
So now we're going to walk through step by step how to convert a React app into React Native. The first thing to note is, what's the real difference? Like, why do we care? So both are open source by Facebook. They're utilized in applications like Facebook, Instagram, Discord, which you're using now, Airbnb, Pinterest, Uber Eats, Skype, and Salesforce. So really heavily used with great UI. So just to clarify the differences between React Native and React.js, because oftentimes they're confused with each other. So React Native is a framework that allows you to build native cross-platform mobile apps. So really, in short, just meant for mobile. And React.js is a JavaScript library that you use for constructing a high-performing UI layer. So that's why we're able to just take React as our base app and build upon it using React Native. And I'll walk through all the differences and what we had to do step by step to convert it. One of the main differences is React uses HTML and CSS to construct the UI, whereas React Native uses its own components and libraries. So the first step that we did is you create a bare Expo app or bare React Native app, depending on what CLI you're using. And then you want to take, originally we had our app.js file in the source folder, and you have to move that out of that into the root directory because Expo is looking for a root component for your app. So that's the first key step. And then from our original React app, we copied over the following folders. We copied over the source folder, which had all of our components that we built, the functions folder, which is like all our API calls, the node modules, so all of the packages and libraries that we need to get our app to run. We also copied over our package.json, which we're going to keep adding to as we add more libraries that we need to run this app, our Netlify configuration file, which is the Netlify toml, and our environment variables file .env. And then you want to just make sure you do npm install to install the packages in your new environment.
And by the way, I should point out that the Expo documentation, both React Native and Expo sites, like when you go to their sites are really good. Their documentation is pretty solid from that standpoint. So all the stuff that Sonia is talking about and everything, yes, it's in the slides that are in the repo, so you have this to reference. But that's not the only thing you have, right? If you go to both React Native site and if you take a look at Expo, they'll kind of bring you through all of this if you want to do this with your own applications as well.
Yep. They're very detailed, super easy to follow. And, we've basically highlighted all of the complicated parts, that took us a few steps to go through. So just to summarize some of the key code differences. The main one is HTML tags are no longer valid, and you have to use React Native components. So you can see here some of the parallels. So instead of div, you use view in React Native. Instead of input, you use text input. Instead of a list, use a flat list. So another example of something that's different is CSS is no longer there, which adds additional complications. And instead you use something called style sheets. And I'll go into detail in the next slide. Another thing that's interesting to note is you now have to import each component that you use from React Native explicitly. It's not like you can just do import star from React. You have to really import each piece. And because CSS is no longer available, now you have things for layout like Flexbox. You have to use libraries like Navigator and Animated Library because CSS is just not used in React Native. So one thing that's the same from React is props and state. And I thought we would just go through this because this is something that we did add in our React Native app. So props is short for properties, and they're used to pass data between React components. So these were also used in our original React app, but we added additional ones for React Native. So in this case, you can kind of think of them like parameters that are passed into a constructor. So whenever you create, let's say, a to-do list item, because this is from the to-do list, you'll have to pass in to-do, complete rest to-do, and the delete rest to-do properties. In comparison, state allows components to create and manage their own data. So unlike props, you can't pass data with state, but you can create data and manage it within your component. So in this case, we used state to manage the state of the checkbox to make things, the UI work really quickly. So setting the state and then communicating that back to the database. So here's a little more detail on CSS versus style sheets. So above in the image here, you can see how CSS looks versus how style sheets look. So what we did is we had originally in our original app, we had a long index.css file, and we had to take each of those pieces and convert them over into each component file. So the syntax is quite different. There are no classes in CSS in style sheets, and the styling for each component is typically done using the styles attribute. So you can see here class name versus styles.complete in style. Style sheets use camel case. Descriptive values need to be in quotes or brackets depending on where you're putting it, and you need a comma at the end of each one instead of a semicolon because in CSS it's JSON. Certain attributes have parallels from CSS to React Native. So you frequently need to read through the documentation to find the one that's right. Most of the time they're pretty similar, but sometimes you need to find something that sounds the same, try it out, test it, find some examples, and then you'll be able to figure out the right parallel for that particular property. Now in React Native for import statements, you still need to import React. It's not like you just convert over to React Native and now you don't need React anymore. So you add the component-based imports, like I stated before. And then if you add any additional libraries or features or properties, you have to import those specifically as well.
Right.
Okay, David, back to you.
All righty. So, all right, let me go ahead and grab the screen and boop, there we go, magic. All right, so at this point, I did see some folks say that they got through step 3. So there's a real key thing here in step 3. So if you remember what we did, I'm just going to go back through it. And this is, again, to deploy our site up to our production CDNs and this is for the site itself. So we don't have to have any servers or install it on our own web servers or anything. That's what Netlify is doing for us. And by the way, I did see a question, somebody pointed out, hey, if I'm a beginner to React, then is this going to be useful for me? And here's what I really suggest, and I'll go ahead and put it in there again. At the very, very top of this repo, you'll see this little section right here. If you're not, and I'll just put the link in here as well. This is if you are not as familiar, if you're not familiar with React, you've never done this before, I highly suggest maybe start I'm typing while I'm talking. For React, start here. I'm putting that in the chat. Maybe start here. Okay, this will bring you on the React journey, and then you can do this one as a follow-on. You can still follow with us today. No reason why not to. If you follow the instructions, it should work. But that way, if you are new to React, you have somewhere to start. Okay, so we deployed our site. I'm following the instructions here. We went to, it already did our site deploy. So we'll get a screen like this. I'm going to click on this first deployment. And you see, you should hopefully get to a point where it's fully built the site and you see this site is live, right? Now, once you've done that, good, your site is live. It's just like it says. What you want to do next, though, is all the way at the top, you're going to see you have your specific site, right? It auto-generates these site names. Click on that. Now, this next step is really, really key because you need to be working out of your repository, not our DataStax devs repository for the next section. There's a couple different ways you can do this, but for one, you see this deploys from GitHub, right? So I'm going to open that in a new tab. And notice this is the same repo, but notice it's in my GitHub, right? That's really important. So you want to go to the site that was generated for you. And what's really cool about this, Netlify, somebody asked earlier, do I need to fork it? No, Netlify does this for you, right? It actually copies over the repository. Now this repository is not only in my account, but Netlify is hooked up. So now anytime I make any changes to my main or my master branch or whatever, it will automatically get deployed to Netlify. So this is part of that whole infrastructure that's really cool. So again, this is really important that you go to the site, this GitHub link that was created in Netlify once your site is built, and that you're in yours, and just bring yourself back down to the instructions because you're going to follow the rest of the instructions from your site. All right, so the next we're going to go to number 4, but I want to stop and see how many of you are with me at step 4 on your site. Can you give me a thumbs up? Yeah, because I would hate for all of you to start the Gitpod stuff and be in the other repository. Thank you, Stormy Indian. I see a thumbs up from Stormy Indian. Let's see. Cool. I'm seeing some come through. Excellent. Yes, because we want to go to step 4 here. Wonderful. Okay. Hey there, Aniket. I'm in step 4. Hey, Harsh. Wonderful. Yeah, as long as you're in your own site, you can move on. Wonderful. Okay, I'm seeing a good amount of thumbs up, so we'll go ahead and move on to the Gitpod portion. So once you are in your own repository, like you see I'm in mine, now you can use this Open in Gitpod button. Now, something to point out, this Gitpod button works with Chrome and Firefox. I've actually noticed it's starting to work with Brave. I don't know if they made some updates recently, but if you're in other browsers like Safari, you may notice it'll say like, I don't know what workspace you're talking about. That is all explained down here in this section, right? So really this button is a shortcut. It uses this Gitpod, this from referrer, and that will launch the Gitpod IDE linked to your repository. But again, if you're not using Chrome or Firefox, you might get what looks like an error. So just make sure to follow the instructions right here. It'll tell you what you need to do. All right, but this should launch the IDE in your browser. This is VS Code, by the way. If you're not familiar with Gitpod, or if you've not used it in a while or something like that, they were using, it was Thea for a while, and they recently switched over and added VS Code. So this is the VS Code, just like you would use locally. The difference, though, is it is deployed up in the cloud, and you don't need the local resources on your machine really to use it. Now, you'll notice, and I'll zoom this one because I know this one gets pretty small. You should see something like this in the terminal. You're going to see all of these npm install commands. What's going on here? So this is something nice with Gitpod, and it's actually one reason why we use it. Gitpod has something called a Gitpod YAML, and what it's going to do, it's automatically going to install all of those libraries for you. So the point, why am I pointing this out? Because if you were doing this in your own app, especially for the choices that we made, using things like Expo, using React Native, using some of the libraries for some of the widgets, then these are all the libraries that we have to install. Right, so this is something you would be doing in your own project, but we've done it here for you in Gitpod, and they're going to automatically load. Oh, thanks, Karen. I'm glad you think this is rad. All this whiteness is hurting my eyes. Pedro, are you talking about your VS Code? Because you can change it to dark mode. Oh, how do you get to dark mode? Pedro said, I want to say if you go to the hamburger menu up here. Oh, can I remember where it is? Where is it? God, I haven't done it in a while. Is it preferences? It was easy to find once. Now I'm going to say it's easy to find and not find it. Right? Is it in settings? Let's see. It's in here somewhere. If someone knows where dark mode is, please say so. I know it's in the settings somewhere. I haven't changed it for a while. But yes, you can set to dark mode. All right. All right. Oh, is it in preferences, Jesus? Thank you. I see you guys working through it. Thanks, Pedro. Yeah. All right, so now we're going to let this part bake. Right now, again, if you think about it, if you were doing this on your own, you would have to, it's npm, it's going to download the world, we know that. But you would actually have to go through all of this. So we're just doing it all in one big lump sum. That's what we're paying for right now while Gitpod loads. So if you get to the point here where Gitpod is loading these, give us a thumbs up, and then we're going to go into the next section of content while we let this bake as well. I know, I like Midnight Lizard too. I think that's great. Oh, it looks like Sachin found it. Setting color themes. All right, so the hamburger menu, file, settings, settings, and color theme. Do I need to search for it? Yeah, I guess I will. Color theme. Oh, there it is. Okay, I searched for color while I was in settings, and there you go. Yeah, cool. Thank you, Session. All right, so we're going to let this go. I see some thumbs up coming in. Yes, Karen. Yeah, there are lots of customizations in here, that's for sure. Stormy Indian, great, thank you. And again, we're not waiting for all of the libraries to finish. If you've loaded Gitpod in the IDE and you have the libraries loading at any point, then we're good to move on for now. Oh, mine just finished, actually. So there you go. Cool. And the last thing to do is this command right here, this git remote-v. Why? Because I want to double check before you move on that you actually are in the correct repository. Let me zoom that one a little bit more. Notice that it's in my repository, not DataStax devs. So please do this step, because if you're in DataStax devs, you're going to have to go back and do the Netlify step again. And I want to catch it before we get all the way down through things. Yep, that's, Shalaswar. Yeah, if your Gitpod is still loading, it takes a moment, right? All right, well, while everybody's Gitpods are still loading, why don't we go back over to Sonia and let's talk about the next section. What do you think?
Sounds great.
Is there anything you want to address or any questions or anything you saw while I was chatting there?
I've been chatting back to everyone in the chat. Okay. Exactly. So
okay, great.
Looks like everything's pretty good to go. And of course, if there are any others, feel free to bring them to my attention.
Wonderful. All right, it's all you.
Okay. So in this section, we're going to cover the configuration of your app that you're seeing going on in the Gitpod right now. So it'll run properly. So to start off with, the netlify.toml file is a configuration file that specifies how Netlify builds and deploys your site, including redirects, branch, context-specific settings, and more. And so one of the things that we had to do was configure that to work with Expo. Since Expo has different build commands for each platform and also expects a different folder name. This was actually, spoiler alert, one of the things that was causing us an issue for a while, and then we went through the documentation again and realized that Expo expected web build. So, our job here is really to just kind of remove some of the hiccups that we went through when we were working on converting this and getting all the platforms to work together and pointing out those issues so that when you're going through it, you don't find that to be a random bug that you can't figure out. Another thing that we had to do, and you can see this below right here, is in the .env file, so our environment variables file, we had to make sure that all the IPs and ports were matching, so they were expecting the right thing on either end, so that Expo, Netlify, Gitpod, and all our 3 emulators, iOS, Android, and let's say your browser, Chrome, for example, were all connecting. Locally, that meant programming in your, inserting in your actual IP. On Gitpod, it was using your workspace URL. On Netlify, it's something slightly different. So while we're all waiting for our Gitpod workspaces to get set up, it might be useful to just go through all the things that are getting installed right now. So to start off with, as you can see, we install Node, and then we install 2 command line interfaces. So one for Expo and one for Netlify. We also install Astra Setup, so that allows you to create your .env file during the workshop. We also have ngrok here, and that's for using a tunnel in Gitpod so that we can use the cloud-based IDE, Gitpod. And then we also have a couple libraries for new mobile gestures and features that we didn't have in the original React app. So that includes a gesture handler to enable swiping gestures, and then a segmented control, which is at the top of the to-do list, and we'll show you that again at the end. A couple other things that we added are custom fonts. So we just used Inter just for simplicity, but you can use any custom Google font that you have. And then we also added a plugin for using our environment variables inline in our files. So that was using Babel, so that we could switch environments easily and switch our API calls accordingly. So to configure the endpoints right here, in our api.js file, if you want to go look at this in the code in the repo, what you can see is our original call. So it was originally very simple, just for a web app, going to the functions folder in Netlify. But when we were doing this locally or on Gitpod or on Netlify, we needed a slightly different configuration. So we added another function here called generate endpoint to customize that. So if you're doing it locally, you need to take your actual IP address and put in the same port across the platforms. If you're running on Gitpod, you set that variable to be true. And then if you're running on Netlify, you set that to be true. So depending on what we're running at the time, we swap our environment variables accordingly. So we added that configuration so that we wouldn't have a challenge making ends meet, no pun intended. And another thing that we added here is exactly what we did to add in inline.env so that we can do exactly this call, process.env.gitpod, and access those environment variables inline in our code. Okay, David.
Yes. All righty. So, I see a question that just came in, by the way. I just want to answer this one. Pablo asked, is Astra open source? No, Astra itself is not open source, but it's built on Apache Cassandra, we're the company behind Apache Cassandra. Also, a lot of the pieces that Astra is built on, the Kubernetes plane, Cassandra is completely open sourced. The APIs that are already there with regard to things like REST, the document API, GraphQL, the gRPC, the Kafka stuff, that's all part of Stargate.io, which is also open source. The drivers are open sourced. I mean, the vast majority of the stuff that goes around Astra is all open source, but Astra itself is not open sourced. Yeah, Jesse, here you go. Feel free to reach out to me. Discord is also a good place to go if you need to. There you go. All right, so I should probably switch the screen back. All right, hopefully you are all somewhere like here, where we have Gitpod. It has loaded up, and it is finished essentially downloading the world, right? It's finished installing all those libraries. Okay, so hopefully you're with me. So what we're going to do, and by the way, that was step 4B where we did that. The next thing we want to do, this is just a check, right? We want to check. Now, here's the thing. If you did this in Gitpod, your node and NPM versions should be the right versions, right? That totally should be there. Now, for those of you who are more advanced, if you chose to do this locally and you wanted to try your hat at this in your own local environment, you're going to want to definitely do these to make sure you have the right node and NPM versions, because there are minimum requirements that we have. So we're going to do that here in a moment. But the first thing I want to do is notice this little widget. It's here in the instruction. I want to split my terminal because we're going to need both in a moment. I'm actually going to, let me open this a little bit. There we go. So we're going to need both in a moment. So I'm just going to split. Again, that icon is the one over here. It looks like a little book. I'm just going to split my terminal. So I have two of these. And you'll see you have two. And then I'm just going to check my versions. Again, it should be good. We want to be at least NPM 7 and Node 15. Okay, wonderful. I'm at 7 and 16. Great. Now, I shouldn't really need to do this next thing. Again, it's if they're not updated, I'm just going to do it just because. But if for some reason you don't have the latest version of Node, or if you're not above 15, then you want to use that. In my case, in most of your cases, they'll say, hey, you're already good, right? And then we'll move on to step 6. Yeah, Ganza, as far as like MongoDB, like it depends on what you're doing, honestly, from the data layer. Mongo is known very well from the document database standpoint. It's another NoSQL database, just like Cassandra is. The difference, though, is that Mongo is pretty much for documents. It doesn't scale quite the same way that Cassandra can. And it does have like a master-slave, a leader-follower kind of topology, where Cassandra doesn't, right? Cassandra is known, it can scale much better. That's not the word I wanted to use. It scales better. But no, Cassandra is known to be able to scale, whether it's a handful of nodes or thousands of nodes, and can handle cases like, Apple and Siri and Netlify on Netflix with like tens of millions of operations a second kind of thing. So it really, it just depends. It depends what you're after. The cool thing is that in Astra and Stargate, you do have a document database there, so you can actually store native JSON objects, but that's getting kind of out of scope and everything. Okay, so let's move on to step 6. Now, this is where, when you're using Expo, you do need to register with them. And again, it's free, so there shouldn't be any kind of cost or anything like that. If you've not done that before, go ahead and either click the link. Now, if you put Expo register here, you're going to put these in the terminal. It will actually launch. You're going to see it's going to launch the simple browser. Now, what you're going to find is that Expo doesn't seem to like the Gitpod browser, the simple browser from Gitpod. So it's going to say, hey, it refused to connect. So you can either just click the link here, or in the simple browser up here, you can click this to launch a new tab. That will then bring up. So anytime you ever see this, you can always launch. My thing is obscured, so that's why you see me looking around the camera. You can always launch this into a new tab by clicking that button, right? So I've already registered for Expo. Go through this step. You should get to a screen that looks like this, and this will get you going with Expo. All right. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to log in, right? Because we need to essentially ensure that our workspace here is logged into Expo. So I'm going to log in. This is going to use the account that you just created. There we go. It says, okay, I'm now logged in. And do you really need the who am I step? This is just us doing an extra check just to ensure that you are logged in with your account, and just to make sure that that's all good and hooked up. All right, so once you've gotten to this point, oh, thanks, Ped, I appreciate that. Once you've gotten to this point, give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you're logged into Expo and you're ready to go on. And let's see. I don't know if I'm in the data. Oh, Bala, if you don't know if you're in the DataSex, how do you do it? That's that git remote. So if I go back up here for you, here, I'll put the command in. Do this. There you are. Do that command. That git remote -v will show you which repository you're in. Yeah, totally harsh. I'll repeat it. All right, so what I'm going to do, again, one of two things. Either I will just put Expo register right in my terminal. When I do that, it's going to launch it into the simple browser up here, but again, it doesn't like it. So I'm just going to click the little widget you see in the top right. That'll launch it into a new tab. That should bring me to the registration page. If for some reason that's not working for you, the link is right here, right? You just go to expo.dev, sign up. And where you want to get to this is you just want to get here in this page. Again, you should not have to pay anything or whatever. And then I want to say Expo login. Okay, so this is now going to log in. It's going to link my workspace to Expo, right? Now, it says I'm already logged in. Am I going to log in as a user? I'll say yes, and I'm going to put in, this is the same credentials I would have just registered with Expo with. And it should say, okay, you're now logged in. Okay. You don't need the priority plan. Yeah, Sachin, you don't need to do that. Yeah, you can go with all the basic stuff. All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up come in. And then that last step again for the who am I is just to double check. I mean, if you've logged in, it should be fine. We like to double check. That way you have that extra little check in here. And you should be at something that looks like this. All right. All right, we'll give everybody just a moment. Okay. Good, I see more coming in. Cool. I see some great questions too. And thank you, Rags, I see Rags and Ryan in there. Now, for this next step, this one's totally on your phone. I can't really show this. This is really just going whether on an Android device or an iOS device, whatever word I chose to say right there. And going, you can see the Expo app in Android and Expo Go in iOS to go and install those. So if you don't want to do this step, that's totally up to you. This is the fun step, though, because I found doing this and being able to run an actual native mobile app in Expo natively as compared to just through my browser was really cool. So I really suggest doing this step. Again, if you don't want to do it right now, you don't have to, but it's fun. So I'll give everybody a moment to go ahead and do this step. step 7. I see some thumbs up from Karen, Gunza, and Wardo. Thank you. And let us know when you've done step 7. When you've installed Idiot. Thank you. All right. All right, I see more thumbs up, Rizwan. Thank you. Or Rizwan, sorry. So here's what I want you to do. Yeah, I see your little head, Karen. Perfect. Yes, the Expo app, when we finally launch this thing, it's going to give you a QR code that you can just scan, and then it launches the app globally or locally. It's really cool. Yeah, so when we're using Expo, it's going to use the Expo app or the Expo Go app, depending on what platform you're on, to actually run the native app. Yes. No, Rashawn. No, you can. I mean, you're here, but really, to be done, if you want to get the badge, go through. You'll see there's a homework section at the top of the repo. Just go through the content, show us your deployed app, and submit it. It's all in the homework section. Oh, I'm glad you think so, Richie. I actually think this is fun. The Expo stuff is really neat, actually. So Pablo, great question. Let me say this one out loud. And Sonia, I'll be curious to see if you have any thoughts on this. He says, okay, this app runs over the Expo platform. In general, to run a React app on mobile, do you have to use Expo? No, you do not have to use Expo. It is the choice that we made because we specifically, in running the workshop, we needed to make sure it's accessible to everybody. And when we were comparing Flutter and Expo, the big difference is that with Flutter, I still need to download all of the development tools, things like Xcode. I have to download Android Studio. It's like altogether, I think we're talking like 20 gigabytes worth of stuff, right? So we chose a platform that we could use where we could do it all up in the cloud and have everybody be able to do it with us. So that was kind of one of the key pieces from that standpoint. But you do not have to use Expo if you're doing React Native. It's not a requirement. We're going to do that in a minute, Harsh. Sonia, did you have anything else that you wanted to mention as far as the Expo thing, or?
No, that's exactly right.
Okay.
Expo just enables you to see your app really quickly on your phone.
Yeah.
You get to that, wow moment so quickly because you start setting up an app and you can see it on your phone right away, as opposed to spending an hour downloading Xcode, downloading Android Studio, going in there and configuring the simulators. Instead, you just use your mobile device as your simulator. It's very rewarding. So it's also convenient for a cloud-based workshop. So. Yeah,
exactly. Harsh, is that 84 megabytes? Is that for the Expo app? That is definitely significantly smaller than the many gigabytes. When we were first, when we first decided to do a workshop on this, and we were kind of evaluating what direction we were going to go, once that kind of was the deciding factor when we had almost 20 gigabytes of stuff we had to download otherwise. Mm-hmm. All right, here's what I'd like to do before we go to this section here. I know some of you were having a hard time creating the database, right? So I want to make sure we're good from that standpoint. So here's what I'd like you to do. Not only that, we never created our tokens. So let's go back up. I want you to go back up to step 1. And we're going to go back to create our database. If you hadn't done this before, because we not only need the database to hook it up, but we're going to need that token to create in a second for it to authenticate. So I'm going to go back to this step. If you weren't able to do this before, I'm going to go ahead and our little problem there was fixed, should be fixed. So I'm going to do the same thing before. I'm going to put in the database name and the key space. I'm going to pick my region and my provider. Again, just something close to you. And then say create database. Oh, is it still giving you the error now, Pedro? Pedro, do me a favor. Log out and log back in. Let me know if it's still doing it. And same, Mertz, what issue are you having? Are you still having an issue where it won't let you do it at all? Oh, interesting. It worked for me a moment ago, and now I'm seeing it again myself. Well, that's unfortunate. Okay. All right. Got it. Okay. I'll let them know. Yeah, we ran into some interesting issue, and I know that the team is working it. I'm going to try something. I'm curious. I'm going to see if this works. because the funny thing about it is I know that the issue is actually with the front end, not the back end. So I'm going to try something. And if this works for me, it might also work for you. So give me just a moment. Let's see. Now, you need a token. And you may not be able to do that part, but we'll find out. Just a second. Okay, I have an idea. I have an idea. So for those of you who are having an issue, let's see if you can create a token. When you are first, if you're in the dashboard, I don't know if this is going to work just yet. You want to click, actually, let me do it first. Let's make sure that same front end issue isn't going to cause an issue here. Okay, so far so good. Yes, I'm going to go back over this, so don't worry. Perfect. Okay, here's what I'd like you to do. If for some reason you had an issue creating your database, right? Then from your dashboard, go to current organization, this drop down on the top left. Click that. Go to organization settings. Now, notice I went to a different tab, right? So I middle clicked it, or I say open link a new tab, right? So I'm suggesting to do that because you're going to want this later, like I did here. Then go to token management, pick database administrator, and then generate token. I wonder how many you had, Carl. If you had more than 5 or something like that. Okay. All right. Now, what I'd like you to do is get to a point where you're here, where you have your token. Cool. Let's say Pedro, wonderful. So this token, this is the one we want, the one that says token. So I want to copy that in my buffer. You can click the little widget here or just copy it. You should, by the way, also download the token details. You always want to do that. But while we're here, you can just copy that token into your buffer. Then here's what we're going to do. Oh, just leave this window open because we're going to need to come back and copy it. Go back to Gitpod and down at step 8. We're going to try this together and see if this will work better. There's this command at step 8, this npm exec astra setup to-dos native workshop to-dos. Copy this, put it into your terminal. It's going to ask you for that token. So what I want to do is I want to come back over here, get the token. I'm just going to paste it. Okay. And hopefully you get a message like this. It'll try to create the database. Yeah, thank you, yeah, thanks, Rags, for that. Yeah, the token instructions, I can do it again, no problem. The token instructions are also in the repo. Yep, we'll do it. I'll do it again. All right, let's do it again. So again, if you had a problem, for those of you who created your database, you should be good from that standpoint. I'm doing this as a way to kind of go through the back end here to create the database if you had an issue. So again, we want to go to current organization in the top left. I'm going to click that drop down, go to organization settings. Now I'm going to open this in a new tab, right? I want to open that in a new tab because I want to use it later. You should see a page like this. Go to token management. Oh, thanks, Jabir. I'm glad that you feel that way. Okay, it seems like a couple of you are still having issues. Okay. Well, I appreciate your patience with that. So again, we'll go to token management, choose database administrator, then click generate token. Once you do that, you'll see a page that looks like this. And then don't forget to download your token details. This is how you authenticate. Oh, is it not? Are we seeing it's not creating the new database if it wasn't already there? Is that what I'm seeing, Rags? Got it. Okay, it looks like some of you are still getting 504s. Okay, for those of you who have data, unfortunately, we'll have to move on. And I know that the team is working on what's going on there. So what we will do is we'll move on. And unfortunately, for those of you who can't create the database just yet, I'm sorry about that. What we can do, though, is the good thing is you can always go back later and do this. We'll have to see what's going on. Yes, Karen. Oh, you start it with Astra CS. You do use the Astra CS in your token. Yes. Okay, so for those of you who have your database and you were able to run the Astra setup command, so we're now back at 8, right? You should see something that kind of looks like this. What that would have done was generate a .env file. So I'm going to open that up. Let me move this over. Okay, and that's actually going to generate this file for us, so we don't have to type all this stuff out, right? And you'll notice here's the token, right? This is how I'm going to authenticate. It's telling me where my database is, all that kind of fun stuff. Now, the next thing we want to do is go to the step 8c. I want to run this special script we wrote. And all this does, this host URL sh, it just added, notice the ones that are highlighted. It just added some other environment variables. What are we doing here? You remember before when Sonia talked about some of the complexities that we ran into when running a native mobile environment, right? Namely that, for one, Android and iOS are looking for different networks for each, even in the emulators and such. Not only that, we have this distinction between whether or not are we running on the local environment, are we running in Gitpod that has a completely different endpoint, which is this, right? Or are we running up a Netlify in production? And so depending on what environment we're in, that's where we have these Booleans, where we're saying, are you in prod or are you in Gitpod? Because there's some conditional code. That's what Sonia was showing you earlier. That's essentially saying, hey, what environment are you on? So the endpoints are configured properly, right? There may be you may have some other ways to do this. This is the way that we chose, but that's where this is coming from. So make sure that you're, at the end of the day, once you're done with running this step at 8c, bash host url.sh, that you see all of these environment variables and these 4 on the end. Oh, Hearts, once you generate the new token, download the token, and then you can go to step, if you haven't done it already, go to step 8b, setup, and you want to run the Astra setup command. We skipped around a little bit because we were having some problems with the back end in Astra, and I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so we're done. We're at 8b, and okay, yep, I see it, Pablo. Thank you. Yeah, while we're talking, I'm actually talking to the team in the back end as well to make sure that they're aware. So I appreciate that. So we are at down at 8b. Once you have your token, run this Astra setup command in your Gitpod terminal. Once that is done, then run the bash host url.sh. At the end, you should see an environment and .env file that looks kind of like this. Once you get here, if you've gotten here, give us a thumbs up. Let us know you're here. Oh, yay, Pedro! I know that while we're talking, they are literally like, it looks like there was a back-end service that kind of went belly up. And they were literally fixing it as we were doing it. So there's a chance that for some of you who were having a challenging time with the database, it'll start working soon. Okay. And now the token is the same. The token should be the token that you have from when you generated it. It'll look like it'll be down here. I'm not sure what you meant, Pedro, and now the token is the same. Maybe you could restate that. All right, so now we're almost there. We're so close. We're so close. All right, so once you've gotten to the point where you've got your environment variable, your .env and your environment variables and your .env. Now we want to actually start the app. Yes, Pedro, that's it. Yeah, now I understand. Okay. Oh, Vinicius looks like is ahead. Juan, what part is not working yet? Is it the database part or something else? Okay, so. Okay, let's see. So what we're going to do now is I've got my .env file. I have all my values. Now I'm going to go ahead and do Netlify dev. Now I want to point something out that we're doing here. When using Expo, separate from the app, that is by default, the web app would run at 8888, that port, 8888. But Expo uses lots of ports in the 19,000 range. So you're going to notice that we have this little semicolon, GP preview, GP URL 8888. Like, what is that about? What we're telling the preview pane in Gitpod to do is to run at the 8888 endpoint. But as you notice, it's an order of operations thing. It doesn't always work like that, right? So look what I'm doing. Notice that I just changed my port up here. I just changed it to 8888, right? That's what you want. You want to use 8888. So if it generates one that's like in the 19,000 range, make sure you change that. Yeah, Tahal, when you do this on your own, yeah, you follow the instructions stepwise. If you want to clear your terminal, Harsh, you can just say clear. Yeah, you can literally type clear in the terminal. All right, so hopefully you have a to-do list over here. And then once you've gotten to that point, again, by the way, if it didn't launch an 8888 for you and you're not familiar with how to do that, this next command here, right there, this GP preview right here, just run that one. That will launch 8888 for you. Cool, Pedro. Then here's the last little piece. This is the fun part. So I'm going to do export start -- tunnel. Notice I'm going to put this in the other terminal, right? That's why we had you create it. That's why we had you split the screen. This one is the app. This one is going to be for the Expo piece. Now, if you get this message that says, hey, I'm already using port 19,000 something. Do you want to use another port? Just say yes. It's totally fine. That's also the instruction here. And then here's where this gets fun. All right, so I got to move this up a little bit. You're going to get this nice QR code. You could theoretically, I wonder, Sonia, I bet you people could scan mine, couldn't they? You want to test that, Sonia? I'm curious. If you scan my code.
I think we had tried that and it worked just fine. So
yeah, so if you want, if you're curious and you downloaded Expo, oh, Jaya got it. Woohoo! That's cool. Oh, we're always recording. Don't worry, Jabir. Yeah. Yeah, we're always recording. All right, so you scan the QR code. You'll see it's loading down here, right? It's going to bundle it up. It's actually doing a bunch of optimizations and stuff. But then at the end, you should, if you've loaded Expo Go, then it will automatically, when you scan that with your phone, it'll automatically load the app in Expo Go. And then after just a moment, here, you can use my QR code. Why not? Let's give it a go. If you're having a hard time with your app, you can use my QR code. I can only imagine to see what to-dos everyone puts in.
Yep, so, you can definitely see it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so
I can see it.
So if you did have a hard time, like with the database or something like that, scan my QR code. And if you loaded Expo Go on your app, on your phone, then it should load. And I'm seeing requests come in, so I know you're all in there. That's what you're seeing here on the left-hand side, that you're all doing it. So, woohoo, Pedro! Shows invalid token. Where are you seeing that, Harsh? Make sure you copy the *CS part of it. So the *CS part here, this whole thing is part of the token. So make sure you have that in there, okay? Oh, that's funny, Tahal. I just realized that I guess you could technically screenshot mine and submit it. I won't know the difference. Actually, I will know the difference because I'll know it's my to-dos. So... Awesome. All right. I see some folks have gotten there. Great. Now, of course, the goal is to do it with your own phone. This is my app. And to do it with your own app and everything like that. Oh, God. What are you guys putting in here? Should I even look at this? Am I going to be afraid?
Things are just getting deleted as far as I can see.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Right. Okay, cool. All right, Harshit, looks like going. Mertz, were you ever able to get your database up and running and stuff? Yeah, Karen, the Expo thing's pretty cool. So something I really want to point out for those of you who have the app loaded and you're working with it and everything, when you're running it through Expo, notice you can tap or you can swipe, right? The controls are built more for a native mobile experience, not so much of a web app, right? Matter of fact, the way that this was built, I can interact with it like I would a web app. Wow. Oh, look at all those come in. That's awesome. That's funny. Or I can swipe, right? You'll see on the phone, I can swipe and such. So there's different, that's obviously not something you could build that on like a regular web app or something like that. But the native components have more of a native feel and everything. So you can really create an app that looks and feels native, but you're doing it in React Native instead of having to do it in Swift and do it in Java and then do it in a web app as well, right? So it makes a big difference. Well, there's a lot coming in. That's awesome. I don't know, Valine, if Expo has limit connections. I'm not sure. Oh, Umkar, the app is not built to automatically refresh and update. Are you talking about in your app, or are you talking about in the app that everyone's adding to-dos, my app? All right, wonderful. Okay, so I think a lot of you were able to get to the point where you have the app running. I see a ton of to-dos coming in. I think that's wonderful. Now, if you weren't able to create your own, that'll probably be more part of the homework and stuff. But yeah, you should see a page that looks like this. Scan the QR code. That's what we've done. And viewing it, we're at that last piece. All right. All right, so if you've gotten to a point where you have this running in your device through Expo Go, give us a thumbs up. Let us know that you've got it going. Oh, totally, Isaac. If you feel so inclined and you want to do a pull request, go for it. Why not? We like to evolve the content and the code and stuff that's in these. You'll find that, like, for something like the To-Do app, we didn't put in a lot of extra logic on top of what you're doing with to-dos because it's really meant to be a beginner app to help introduce people to how to do things. So we try to remove a lot of the stuff we might do in a full-fledged app. But hey, I'm totally up for new capabilities. Oh, should I go back and see I see the ideas are showing. Oh, someone put an icon. Oh, that's cool. I wonder if that's an emoji. I didn't know you could actually do that. That's pretty awesome. All right, I see Carl, Manuel, Bruce. Oh yeah, Harsh, when you do the Netlify dev thing, it's not so much installing, it's just loading up the app. And you're gonna see a bunch of dev output and everything. That's normal. Yeah, Pragya, I am checking into that right now. I know that a lot of folks were able to move on. The issues mostly should have been fixed, but it seems like some of you were still having issues. I'd say give it another shot. Let me know. Yay, Karen, good. Okay, yeah, I know that they have to roll through the fix, so it may just been that not everybody had the fix at the same exact time. Okay. All right, so let's see, Sonia. I think while we're doing this, we've got just a little bit more content to get through. Okay, Pablo, I see. Harsh, what went wrong? When you say something went wrong in the message, something went wrong message in app. If you can give a little more detail there, and we'll follow up. So Sonia, yeah, let's go ahead and go into the rest of the content. I feel like we have some native controls we need to talk about.
We do.
All right, so let me know when you're ready. And there we go. All right, Sonia,
okay.
So let's take a look.
All of you guys can now, hopefully, whichever ones of you have been able to get it working in Expo. You can also see that we've added a couple native features that we haven't gone over yet. And these allow us to have a more mobile friendly experience and also accept some of the gestures that we're totally used to. So as you can see, we added swipeable gestures. So I don't know about you, but I'm always in my email inbox. Okay, mark is red, mark is red, mark is red, striving to hit inbox 0. So we wanted to add that to this app so that you could do the intuitive gesture of like, okay, I'm done with this, I can delete it. Or I can mark this as done or mark it as not done actually. And so you can swipe from either end. So you can swipe from the right side to delete. You can swipe all the way off. From the left side, you can also swipe all the way off to mark as complete or mark as incomplete, depending on the status. So it'll swap back and forth. the way we implemented this is we used refs, which is a React principle, to make the to-do item close itself so that we could use an inbuilt function from the swipeable library, so that once the gesture is finished or it's released prematurely, the to-do item closes. So you can see here I've pictured what it looks like to mark an item complete. Let's say you were going to swipe an item that's already checked. It would show incomplete below, so you're marking it incomplete. Alternatively, you can also click the checkbox or click the delete trash can icon. Another feature that we added is in the original app, we had a filter at the bottom of the to-do list. Well, the only challenge with that on mobile is, like, let's say you add too many to-do items. Now the filter has gone past the end of the page and you don't even actually know that the filter's there. So we decided to add a segmented control instead. So just like, I'm pretty sure this must be on Android too in some cases, but we added something called a segmented control. And you can actually see this on iOS if you have an iPhone, that on the top of the calls list, you can filter your calls based on missed and receipt and all, I believe. So what we did at the top of the to-do list is we added a filter for all to-do items, active ones, so ones that aren't checked yet, and completed, which are the ones that are checked. And one of the last things we did is we obviously changed up the UI quite a bit. So in this case, what you can see here in the image is the status bar. So this is what's at the top of your mobile phone. At the top shows the time, connection to the network, etc. On the top left, you can see an iPhone status bar. iOS does not let you actually customize a status bar, whereas in the bottom right, you can see that Android does. So the background color extends all the way to the top in Android, but doesn't do that in iOS. And it's just a platform-specific thing. And so you kind of have to work around that. A couple other things that we had to add was the property flex wrap. So originally when we were building this, we realized that if you had a very long to-do item, on certain platforms, the text would wrap properly. On Android, it would overflow. So you had to specify flex wrap to set the dimensions for how much it would wrap left and right, and extend the to-do item as well. So programming the height of a to-do item was not a good idea because it wouldn't responsibly expand depending on how long your to-do item was. Another thing that we added was, we noted was, when we were building, I would have the iOS simulator up, the Android simulator up, as well as the web app up. And what that allows you to do is, as you're building and you refresh each platform, you add new pieces of code, you can see how that code interacts with each platform. That allows you to find platform-specific bugs as you're building, which is super helpful because you don't want to just build on Android, for example, and then 2 hours later, once you've added 40 different lines of code, now you look at your app and you realize on iOS it looks totally different or something's wrong. So it's really just best practice to have a lot of them up so that you can keep checking. So one of those platform-specific bugs that a great example is on web, when you selected the text input, so where you go in to write in a new to-do, oftentimes that box would be highlighted in blue when you were typing on there. Well, it just kind of looked a little weird and kind of didn't look intentional. So we had to figure out how to remove that. So that's another UI enhancement that we added. Another one that we did was custom fonts. So you can choose any Google font, because the great part about Google fonts is then they're applicable on web, on iOS and Android. So we brought in Inter so that we could have the same font across platforms. And another thing, just as an advice, just some takeaways from our experience building is, like I said before, platform-specific bugs do crop up because sometimes native behavior is different between the platforms and they have different operating systems. So it's really helpful to keep all emulators open while you're building. Sometimes that does slow down your machine a little bit, but it really helps you just when you get to the end of the app building process and you're super happy that your app works. You don't want to get like an unwelcome surprise that now it doesn't work on Android for whatever reason. It just helps you move things through quickly. Another thing to keep in mind is sometimes when you're installing additional libraries, you'll get this issue called peer dependency errors, and it'll keep coming up. Sometimes you can resolve those manually because they're looking for a particular version number in your package JSON. So go through that and look at that, and you can look up how to configure that to make those go away. Another way to get around that is using the legacy peer dependency flag. And I did find that sometimes helped us get around some of those issues brought up by NPM 7. Another thing to keep in mind is React Native itself, and Expo adds additional features, does not have all of the components you may want to use. For example, the segmented control does not exist within the core React Native library or Expo. And there's a whole directory of different expansions that people have built. And you can go and look that up, and I've linked that in the repository and the blog as well. And you can look up what you need. So for example, there is no checkbox in Expo or React Native. So I had to find a checkbox in a different UI library, import that, and use that. And those libraries are oftentimes really great. And the great way to evaluate those is see how much involvement there is, how many forks there are, or people actually commenting on the repo. And then you can figure out how, when it's most recently been updated, things like that. So you know what you're using is going to be continued to be supported. Another thing to use, and I'm sure is just a normal thing that developers do, but it's worth mentioning, is search for solutions online. A lot of times, sometimes you'll end up with a weird error, and it'll sound odd, and you won't be able to find. Just Google that specific error, and you will find people who have faced the same issue, and they'll have really interesting solutions and workarounds for it. A lot of times when I faced that, it was a great way to get around those. And the last thing is, in addition to the mobile apps, you can also create a progressive web app. And I've linked that quick blog post, and you can create that in under 5 minutes. Okay, David, back to you.
All right. Interestingly enough, Sonia, Renan over in YouTube actually has one of the promise rejection errors, which I'm really surprised to see. So I'm asking, where they're seeing that. Yeah, I'm surprised on that one.
I'm very well accustomed to those. Let me go.
yeah, exactly. No, you're not alone. You're not alone. We went through those, and so that's why I'm actually surprised to see it. All right, so let's see. Yeah, Laporta, there are, if you're just learning JavaScript, if you're not a fan of the syntax, it is popular. I would say it's a really good idea to start with some of the frameworks, things like, React, Vue, or whatever. As a matter of fact, though, if you are just learning JS, let me give you something. It is, in fact, the other repo that is linked at the very top of this one. And in here, matter of fact, I'm going to open this up for you. And we're going to get into the game here in just a moment, okay? So we're going to do the swag quiz real quick, and then we'll close out. So I'm going to give you 2 repos, and the other one I think is at the bottom. Because for those, here it is. Yes. So if you're new to JavaScript and you're new to React, where are you? Let's see, where'd you go? Ah, Laporta, there you go. Here you go. So start with that repo. Again, this is all free and everything. Now, by the way, there are a ton of YouTube influencers and resources out there in React. The React site itself is actually really good. From explaining everything and kind of, oh my God, did you see all these emojis? Oh, I almost don't want to see what that has done. Oh, that's awesome. Whoever did that one. That will be forever immortalized. That's wonderful. Anyway, so yeah, Laporta, yeah, take a look there first, right? The frameworks really help a lot with the syntax and everything, and they make it a much nicer experience and everything. All right, so we are right about time where we need to get to our fun swag quiz. So let's do it. Hope you guys, I know Sonia, you can't hear my music, but we're gonna rock out. So
I can
dance out. You should hopefully have like a little disco, right? We got a little disco. Make sure to use that QR code there, or go to menti.com and put in the code you see at the bottom, that 49777253. You think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. Gonzo, I'll check out your issue there in a minute. All right, let's see how many of you are here with us. Yeah, give us a thumbs up. Let us know you're here, so we can know how many of us are in here, so we can do our swag quiz. Our top 3 winners will get some swag. We'll be able to win some swag. Let's see how we're doing. All right, I'll wait just another minute to let folks get in. Again, there's that QR code, or go to menti.com at 49777253. Oh, you get intro to Cassandra? Where are you seeing that? Where are I have, you know, Omkar and Bruce. Yeah, thank you, Sonia. That's a good idea. Yeah, if you somehow are getting to a different Menti, then restart that. Yes. Well, that's very interesting. Well, here, let me, I don't know why this would be intro to Cassandra. Let's see what happens here. This definitely wasn't intro to Cassandra. All right. Now, key thing when we start the quiz, you know, maybe when we created the new Menti, I didn't rename something. That could be what that is. So sorry for confusion there. But no, you should be in the right place. When we start the quiz, here's the key thing, is that look at your phone. Look at wherever you're running Menti. If you listen to us, there might be lag in the video, and speed matters when you answer. Okay? Alrighty. All right, let's go ahead and do the first one, because I see we have a lot of folks in. Again, look at your phones. What is Astra? We mentioned it very briefly. It's a development tool. It's a local in-memory version of Cassandra. It's Cassandra as a service in the cloud. It's a gateway to the stars. All right, let's see what happens here. All right, yes, it is Cassandra as a service in the cloud. That is that data layer, that back-end data layer. That's where we were creating the database. Let's see what our leaderboard looks like. Good, I'm seeing a lot of very familiar names. Pragya, Mukesh, Benmal. All right, and the top answer there was Val's with the fastest answer. Then Jon Snow. Oh, we have Jon Snow here. I don't know what that portends, but that's okay. I like Jon Snow. And then Venmel in third. Karen, do you still just have the name prop there? Should have. Oh, that's awesome. All right, moving on to the next question. And I was referring to Bruce there. That's funny. Question 2 of 4. Here we go. What tools are required to launch native apps with Expo Go? Xcode for iOS, Android Studio, both Xcode and Android Studio, or none, just Expo Go? Correct, none. Just Expo Go. Right now, it doesn't mean you can't use Xcode and Android to do work and stuff like that, but it just means they're not required for you to launch apps with Expo Go. Very good. Harsh, refresh the browser that you're running Menti in. Oh, sorry, Laporta. I know that can be frustrating. I mean, we do this with thousands of people at times, and I know Menti does its thing, but every once in a while, sometimes you need a refresher or whatever. All right, so in top, Vales, and then Pragya was the fastest time, takes number 2. Jon Snow holding out number 3, but we know that Jon Snow has to die and then come back. So we'll see what happens, Jon Snow. Gerardo, what stack is Xcode used? That is for iOS. That's iOS and Swift. Okay, next question. Question 3 of 4. Hopefully some of you were having a problem with Menti. It is working again. Oh, you're getting up there. Come on, Karen. How do you style HTML with React Native? Using CSS files. With a styles file. Using style sheets defined in code. With Moxie. I don't know. I hope someone got that joke. You got style with Moxie, right? Right? Was that a bad one, Sonia? Do I need to?
No, I like that one.
It was all right. All right. So the correct answer, yeah, this one may have seemed subtle, but it's something that Sonia talked about earlier. You use style sheets that are defining code. So if you're used to doing things with normal web apps and using CSS files, which we've been doing for a long, long time, then you don't do that anymore. You actually use style sheets defined in your code. That's one of the big differences here. All right, let's see what happened to our leaderboard. Once more feeling. Oh, Vales takes the lead. Fastest time, Pragya, number 2, and Bala in 3rd. Let's see what happens here. This is our last question for all the marbles with more feeling. That's Karen, that's funny. In React Native, how do you define a div? View, a div tag, a lowercase div tag, or the Great Divide? Oh, 7th, Karen. Let's see what happens. You never know. Could have just taken the lead. This one is also very subtle. I'm sorry if we're being tricky. All right, so the correct answer here. So the divs were a red herring to throw you off. Yeah, you don't use the normal HTML tags. You actually use a view in this particular case. And the Great Divide, I think you guys all got my joke. So yes, it's view. And there's that slide on there. And by the way, you know, again, you're not relegated to just the slides, which are in the workshop as well. They're actually in the repo. You can get all those details. But this stuff is like really well documented on the React Native site and Expo and stuff. They talk about it at detail. All right, so let's see what happened to our leaderboard. And let's see who takes it. All right, so Pragya takes the lead. Richie and Jay come up in 2nd and 3rd. So if you're one of our top 3 winners, Pragya, Richie, or Jay, I'm going to leave this up. Take a screenshot so you have proof that you are one of the top 3 winners. And you will send, and I'll show you in a second, you'll send an email to jack.fryer@datastacks.com for our winners. So congratulations to our winners. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh, so close. So close, Feline. And you were close too, Karen. Yeah, yeah. You know, you can just, we do swag quizzes every time, right? So you can do another one. Yes, winter is coming. So again, for those who won, I will show a slide on this later. If you're one of our top 3 winners, email jack.fryer@datastacks.com to get your swag. There you go. Alrighty, so with that, let's go ahead and I will move. There's a question we have for you at the end here. Hopefully everyone got their screen. Yeah, honestly, there's a lot of people. There are a lot of people in these, right? So if you're in any of like the top 10 or something, you know, top 20 for God's sakes, yeah, give yourself some credit. All right, so as we wrap up, like I just mentioned a second ago, if you were in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd place there, you know, hopefully you grab that screenshot. Email jack.fryer@datastacks.com with the screenshot of your Menti screen so you can get your swag. To holiday, there's a swag box. It's changed recently. We've been doing a lot of updating to our whole swag pipeline, so I don't know exactly what items we have just yet. But historically, it's been like shirts, metal cups, and cool little trinkets and things like that. So I don't know if Jack or anybody is on and they can tell you more about that. But yeah, there's just fun swag there. Okay, so I mentioned homework. So in the repo, if we go ahead and take a look at that, I'm gonna laugh at this emoji thing a lot. Whoever did that, by the way. In the repo, you'll see that there's a homework section here, right? You see this homework section. So if you want to earn yourself a badge, what this means is that you've gone through the material, you've completed it. To do that, all the instructions are in the homework. There's a link at the end of the homework. You just click that link. It'll submit an issue to the GitHub repository. You just put your image there, your screenshot there. That's all you need to do. Obviously, fill out your name and your email so we can give you a badge. And the cool thing about these badges is that they're verified badges that then you can put on the features section of like your LinkedIn profile. You know, you can put these all over, and you'll find that we have like a dozen of them from other workshops and everything. So they're kind of like, you know, you can use them to brag and such like that. Now, we have something else for you. This is actually kind of cool to check out if you haven't done it before. Look at that QR code that you see on the right-hand side, and make sure you scan that or go to the link you see there, dtsx.io/workshops voucher. Why? Because this, if you have not already done this, you fill this out. This will give you 2 attempts that are $145 each at getting your Cassandra or Kate Sandra certifications, right? So these are 2 free attempts that we're giving you as a thank you for coming and doing the material and being with us and everything like that. So again, take advantage of that, scan that QR code, or go to the link that you see there on the page. And there, for each of these in Academy, and by the way, academy.davidstacks.com, everything there is free. All of our trainings and learnings are always free. So if you're interested in learning more about Cassandra, or if you want to run Cassandra in Kubernetes, and that's what AstraDB is powered on, by the way, then you can go and take these paths, and these paths will provide you with all the information you need to pass your certification and exam. So for those of you who are interested in doing that, I highly recommend checking it out. Then we're almost close to this being complete. If you want to get yourself in a drawing of a hackathon to win some substantial money, notice the amount of prizes that we have here, $26,000 in prizes. So if you want to become a part of the hackathon and you want to submit, you still have some time. So scan that QR code or go to buildamoderndataapp.com and get your app in there to get judged. All the instructions and everything are at the site, by the way. And if you haven't already, come join us on Discord, right? We have a ton of people out there. This is once the session stops, the chat that YouTube is going to stop, right? But if you want to continue the conversation, if you've got follow-ups, if you need help with homework, whatever, the Discord channel is the place to do it. So come join us on Discord and, come wave, submit your homework to me, whatever, and then we can take a look. And then finally, we have workshops every week. We have net new stuff usually at least once a month. We always have stuff coming out. If you take a look at our YouTube channel and subscribe, ring the bell, then you get notified anytime something new is coming up. Like I said, we've got stuff coming out all the time, so there is no shortage of material. And with that, everybody, Sonia, unless you have anything you want to close out with, or
nothing really. Just thanks to everyone for joining. Really appreciate all the participation.
Oh yeah, the QR code is not an Expo app. That's right. That's awesome. And next week is Spring Data. That's right. Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, everybody. And everyone have a wonderful day. Again, follow up with us in Discord if you need to. And we'll see you later. Good luck with your mobile native development. See ya. And as always, don't forget to click that subscribe button and ring that bell to get notifications for all of our future upcoming workshops.
Imagine a being gifted with powers from the goddess of Cassandra, who grew those powers until she could multiply at will, move with limitless speed, and unmask hidden knowledge. With those powers, she was able to fully understand the connectedness of the world. What she saw was a world in need of understanding. From that day forward, she sought to bestow her powers on all who came into contact with her, empowering them to achieve wondrous